President Biden is taking another tumble during the U.S. Air Force Academy commencement ceremony yesterday. The White House says he was not injured. He just tripped over a sandbag. President Biden tried to make light of it after the fall. It was sad to watch. Watch this. Former President Trump and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis both weighed in on the fall.
It's sad. It's sad. It's not, they're representing, we are all representing the country. You become president and you're sort of not allowed to do that, but it's happened. They count those acts, they never forget. But that was a bad fall.
There are plenty of people in your party who say maybe he's not physically and even maybe mentally up for another 4 years in office. What do you say?
People can judge that. I'm running for president because I want the U.S. to have a speedy recovery from the injuries that Joe Biden has inflicted on the country.
Joining me now, the Hill national politics reporter, Julia Manchester. Julia, good to see you. Thanks very much for being here. That looked like a tough fall. It was really hard to watch. Your reaction?
Yeah, good morning, Maria. What we're hearing from Biden world is that, look, everyone falls. This is normal. It happens. That may be true, but here's the problem with the President Joe Biden falling. He's 80 years old and he's running for a second term as president. And he's facing a lot of backlash because of his age and questions about his age. It also opens the door to his Republican opponents to essentially very much attack him over this issue. It's also a really bad visual. We are heading into a campaign season. This was caught on video. We can expect this to likely come up in a number of Republican ads going into primary season and going into the general election. So I think this was the narrative a lot of Democrats were afraid that would continue to develop, these questions over Joe Biden's age. And this video and this situation just hasn't really helped that.
Yeah, I'm with Joe Concha this morning. Joe, jump in. I mean, I think to say everybody falls, and that's the answer from the White House, is really disingenuous, Joe, because the bottom line is we've seen Joe Biden fall a lot.
We have off of bicycles. We've seen him fall going up the stairs to Air Force One. So this isn't just a one-off. My question, Maria, for Julia, and good to see you again, Julia. We haven't seen each other for a little while. I used to be down in Washington with my old friend, Ms. Manchester, at the Hill. Julia, 70% of Americans don't want Joe Biden to run, including a majority of Democrats. So I guess the question is, if that number is so high and you have the president at 35% approval in a recent CNN poll, is there a plan B? Are you hearing anything in terms of any Democrats stepping up and saying, you know what, Joe Biden at 86 years old, and that's how old he would be in his second term, at the end of his second term if he were to win re-election, is there another option that Democrats are really considering at this point?
Yeah, Joe, not for this cycle. Obviously, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is running. He's garnered some traction in the polls, probably in the teens in terms of percentage points, but not enough to really oust Joe Biden as the head of the Democratic Party. And it seems that the Democratic establishment is very much behind Joe Biden as the incumbent. And I think it would definitely be a scramble, and Democrats feel this, if they were to bring someone in. So I fully expect at this point in time, Joe Biden to be the nominee. When I hear other Democratic names, it's always about 2028. So for 2024, despite the questions about his age, Democrats feel that Joe Biden is their safest bet at this point.
Well, I mean, the American people deserve a debate and a look at everyone who's putting their hat in the ring. Isn't that right? Right now, the Democrats are saying there will be no debate. Meanwhile, Robert Kennedy is coming across very well, and Marianne Williamson as well. James Freeman with an op-ed the other day at the Journal saying Biden has a Kennedy problem. So what about that? The fact that the Democrats are just walling off Joe Biden and, no real campaigning, and yet there won't be a debate about who the candidate is either on the Democrat side.
Yeah, look, I think with sitting presidents, we normally see the party very much coalesce around them because, like I said, they view that as the safest option. And we see that a majority of Democrats are behind President Biden in terms of Democratic voters. But look, if you see Robert F. Kennedy Jr. continue to gain traction, even if he doesn't necessarily pose the biggest threat to Joe Biden, then that raises a lot of questions about the momentum and really the, I guess, enthusiasm surrounding Joe Biden. Look, I think that if this might have been if this was a younger president, a younger candidate, we'd be in a different situation. But right now, I think what you see Democrats saying is this is our safest option. They think that they can run on this record of Joe Biden's record over the past 4 years or so. And that's what they plan on doing. And when asking a lot of Democrats about this, they talk about the midterm elections and how Democrats really outperformed expectations, and they hope that they can carry that really into 2024. Yeah,
it's amazing that they see Biden as the safest option. Let's talk about the Republicans for a moment. DeSantis is stepping up his counterattacks against former President Trump, who's been taking aim at him for months. Take a look.
Really need to ensure that we have a two-term president to be able to see this to a conclusion. You got to have humility. You can't be prideful. It can't be just about you.
But when I heard DeSantis go out and say and talk about 8 years, we need 8 years. You don't need 8 years. You need 6 months. We can turn this thing around so quickly. If you need 8 years, who the hell wants to wait 8 years?
Anyone that says that they can slay the deep state in 6 months should be asked, why didn't you do that when you had 4 years to try to do that?
So DeSantis has been claiming that it'll likely take 2 terms to roll back the bad policy moves by the Biden administration. Trump says he can get the country back on track in 6 months, Julia. The policies have had real implications on American families.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think right now, this is how you're seeing Ron DeSantis differentiate himself from former President Trump. And there were a lot of questions about that. I think a lot of us who have covered Ron DeSantis for a while have seen how he's modeled himself to a certain extent after the former president, particularly during the coronavirus pandemic. And then, of course, when he was running for governor in 2018 in Florida. And we've seen Donald Trump very much say, look, I endorsed him in 2018. And he's very much taken credit for Ron DeSantis' win that year. So this is how Ron DeSantis is trying to draw a contrast with President Trump in terms of not only policies, but also, in a way, his age. Look, we talk about President Biden's age. President Trump is 76 years old. He can only serve 1 term. So this is what I think you're going to hear Ron DeSantis continue to say.
All right, Julia, thanks very much. Happy to have your insights. Julia Manchester this morning at The Hill. Quick